Hoka calls the Speedgoat 5 a grippy, cushioned trailblazer that's a workhorse for technical trails. Now, I will be the first to admit that I am not the most accomplished trail runner, but for me, that's not exactly what I got. Let's lace up the Speedgoat 5 one more time and talk about it after 100 miles. Yo, what's going on everybody? My name is Kofuzi and today I'm going to talk to you guys about the Hoka Speedgoat 5. Now, before I talk to you guys about this shoe and how it's treated me over the last 100 miles, I do want to go over some disclosures. Hoka sent me these shoes for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for them. However, no one's paying me to make this video or to use the shoe, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Hoka Speedgoat 5 after 100 miles. First, let's talk about how I've been using the shoe. Now, I've been using the shoe as a faster trail running shoe. It's got a bit more of an aggressive rocker to it, and I feel like I'm just pitched forward a little bit more because of that. It feels like there's just a little bit more nimbleness in the forefoot because I feel like the foam is tapering off rather quickly. I've been using it whenever I feel like I'm going to be on runnable trails that I'm going to want to be able to move over in a very swift manner. So it's not one of those trail shoes that kind of barrels through all the trails. This is one that I think is a little bit more suited for trails that are kind of a little bit more wide open or ones that you're going to dance a little bit more quickly over some of those trickier surfaces. The one thing that I kind of don't like it for, and where I kind of disagree with what Hoka is saying in terms of how they're positioning the shoe, is that I don't really like this for kind of those sloppier or messier or more like kind of like tough, not necessarily technical, but tough conditions where kind of like the footing is just kind of messy, sloppy, or maybe, you know, just kind of caught up in the brush. For those kinds of situations, I didn't really love the Speedgoat 5. Again, I think of more of like terrain, like where the trails are runnable, which is typically the types of trails that I have access to. I think the Speedgoat 5 is just a lot of fun. It is surprisingly soft, but also surprisingly fast. And for the types of trails that I typically have access to in the northern Midwest, I have such a great time running in this shoe, and it is a lot of fun. It's just that when things get a little bit sloppy or the trail isn't quite as cleared through, that's where I feel like I just don't have as much confidence in the Speedgoat 5 as I would have in, say, like a Mafate 4. And I think part of that's because even though this is a wide platform that you're landing on, I just think that the way that the shoe is tapered up front, it just doesn't feel like there's a lot to kind of like stomp on in terms of reaching down and grabbing the ground for some traction. And I feel like that's something that the Mafate 4 does a little bit well, although the trade-off there being that shoe doesn't feel quite as much like a speedier shoe for me. So when I think about the Speedgoat 5 and kind of how it fits into the Hoka lineup, I think it kind of sits in between the Mafate over here and the Zinal over here in terms of like the shorter, faster type of trail racing. And so like for people that really enjoyed the Zinal, which I love the Zinal, is one of my favorite trail shoes I ran in last year, I just didn't feel like I could run it for an extremely long period of time, like 2 hours tops. After that, I kind of felt like there just wasn't enough underfoot, and I felt like my feet were starting to feel the impact of the ground. If you want to be on the ground a little bit longer, but still kind of have that kind of Zinal-like zippiness, then I feel like the Speedgoat 5 is a fantastic shoe. Now, I'm going to go a step even further. I mean, I know I'm already like really annoying all the Speedgoat loyalists out here by comparing this to like a more cushioned Zinal instead of saying the Zinal is like a stripped down Speedgoat, but all those things aside, here I'm going to make you guys even more mad. I think that the Speedgoat 5 is actually a really good road to trail shoe. Even though we've got these huge Vibram Mega Grip traction lugs on the outsole, it actually has pretty good road manners overall. And I think that's part of what also makes it so good on runnable trails, is that it's just really good running shoe mechanics if you're on a relatively hard packed surface, whether that's a trail or a natural surface or something a little bit more on the man-made side. But if you are going to put this shoe onto the roads or something that's a little bit less natural, you are certainly going to pay for it in terms of the durability. So let's talk about how this shoe has been holding up. In terms of the upper, I really love the way that this upper fits. I do think that it's a little bit strange for a trail shoe to have this kind of Achilles flare, because I do feel like, you know, dirt, water, mud, all that stuff's gonna get in there. There's a lot of days where I'm picking out like little prickle burrs out of the back of the heel in this shoe. So it's not doing a great job of keeping stuff out, but overall it is a very comfortable shoe, especially if you're on some of those more runnable trails where you can really let it rip for long periods of time. The other thing that I really love about this shoe is what they've changed with this flexible vamp area. I think that's what they're calling it. But last year there was the Speedgoat 4 and the Evo Speedgoat. The Speedgoat 4 had like a very not flexible piece of, it seemed like it was like, I don't know if it was like vinyl or fake leather or something that was not stretchy at all in this portion of the toe box. And it made for a very low volume toe box, like it wasn't very tall and there wasn't any give in here at all. The Evo Speedgoat had something that was even stretchier than this. So now we have something that's kind of in the middle, but also leaning more towards the Evo Speedgoat, where this is stretchy and moves. And so you still have that kind of like low volume toe box. It gives you that kind of like locked in racer feel, but you get a little bit of flexibility in here. That's nice for when you're on the trails, but also when your feet are starting to swell if you've been in these shoes for a couple of hours. So this all fits really well and everything is holding up really nicely. Even this stretchy part here is showing no signs of wear at all, just a couple of stains from getting it in the mud, but other than being dirty, the upper looks absolutely fantastic to me. Now, going to the midsole, I also feel like we're still holding up really well. And this is where I feel like all those people that are like, you know, EVA is dead and have been crying that for years, I feel like this is a really fantastic midsole. I feel like this feels great on the trails. It feels snappy, but also cushioned. And it also feels like it's giving me just the right amount of kind of like stability and structure for what I want on a trail shoe. And I also feel like the midsole feels really fresh. I still feel like there's plenty of life in it. Those of you who have been telling me that you get like 500, 600 miles out of your Speedgoats, I think that you're gonna be happy that they really haven't messed around too much with what's going on in the midsole. Hoka had something that worked in the Speedgoat and they haven't tinkered around with that midsole too much. And I really like what they're doing. It's holding up well. The area where I don't think that it's holding up that well, and your mileage certainly may vary, is gonna be on these traction lugs on the outsole. Now, I've run on a lot of like very well manicured, almost like kind of like access roads, dirt roads, rocky roads, and sometimes on some paved surfaces as well. So that's gonna really affect how quickly these traction lugs get worn down. They're really nubby, gnarly kinds of things that are meant to really grab in. And maybe it's because I've worn mine down a little bit after 100 miles. That's why I'm not feeling so secure and confident when I'm getting into some of the more slippery stuff. But I just feel like even at its kind of like freshest, it was good, but it never felt like, I mean, if you're like really need something that's going to claw into the ground, you're not looking at, I don't think you're looking at V-Rim. I think you're looking at something like the kinds of things that Solomon puts out, that Innovate puts out, that are just rock solid claws that kind of are stuck to the bottom of your foot. I don't want that, and I don't really run in terrain that warrants that. So this strikes a really nice balance for me here. The only downside is that in this particular shoe and in the way that I've used it, it does seem to be wearing down just a little bit faster than I'd like to see at 100 miles in a trail shoe that I think otherwise could probably last several hundred miles. Overall, I gotta say, running in the Speedgoat 5 has been an absolute pleasure for me this year. I really think that it's such a big improvement over the Speedgoat 4 last year, while also not straying from that Speedgoat DNA. So I think Hoka did a fantastic job in the update for this year. I definitely think it's worth upgrading from the 4 to the 5 because I think this shoe is fantastic. I also wouldn't mind if they made the Speedgoat 5 in a GTX version. The Speedgoat 4 GTX version is marked down heavily. It's on clearance on the Hoka website. So I'm hoping that there's a Speedgoat 5 GTX that's coming up because we got winter running coming up here in the Midwest, and I love me a good GTX or Gore-Tex shoe for those winter trail running miles. But on the other hand, if Hoka's only gonna make one trail running GTX shoe this year, and I had to pick only one, it wouldn't be this. I'd probably pick the Mafate 4. So those are my thoughts on the Hoka Speedgoat 5 after 100 miles. Let me know in the comments down below if you have other questions, or better yet, stop by the live stream they do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. I'd love to talk to you guys in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?